Kelly Dickson. Welcome to That's For Sure podcast. I'm so glad that you're here.
Yeah, it's so fun to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you about what you're up to, but it's been bugging me all morning in preparation for this. I cannot remember how long it's been. It's been a hot minute since we've actually seen each other. And I want to say, I haven't seen you possibly since you and your family moved to Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon. How many years has that been?
10. Can you believe we've lived here for 10 years?
No, that's wild.
Doesn't feel like it's been that long. Yeah, but I think it's been roughly that because I feel like we saw each other right before I left, and that's it. But since then, other than your beautiful Christmas cards, that's it. That's all we got.
That's all we got. That is so wild because for a short chunk of time there, a couple of years, we saw each other all the time. I mean, we did ministry
together.
We did Africa together. We could tell some stories. We could tell some stories.
Sure couldn't we now?
Specifically watching scenes or episodes of The Office on a sheet that was like taped or something to the wall in our little hotel room, and we had some kind of projector, and we would watch The Office.
Wait, we did that in Malawi?
Yes.
I do not even remember that. Also, I feel like giving birth to children has meant that I give birth to my brain, so my memory is
100%.
So short now.
100%.
But I just remember all of our Bachelor nights of watching that, which we probably shouldn't talk about on a podcast that's meant to be about good things. But yes. The Office too.
The Office, so many nights watching The Bachelor at your house. But I feel like this was pre-Bachelor going way downhill. Like we watched.
Totally.
It was never great, but it was the early years, which were better than.
It wasn't nasty. We stopped watching when it got nasty. But
yeah.
We stopped watching when it was no longer appropriate for us to wear our wedding dresses to view it. It was like, no, they shouldn't. Anyway. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. That just reminded me of when we went to see the movie 27 Dresses while wearing bridesmaid dresses.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And what I specifically remember about that movie and about that time is how we showed up late because we had gone to dinner before and we were late
to get cheese. We went cheese tasting at Fancy. Yes. And we were late. Yes.
That's right. So when we walked in, I don't think anyone really noticed us because it was dark. Everybody's laser focused on the movie. But when the lights turned on at the end, the movie was over. The credits were rolling. Yeah. By then I had forgotten that we were all in our dresses.
Sure, there was like 15 of us, maybe 20. I don't know. There's a lot of us in bridesmaids dresses.
And then everyone around started laughing. And I kind of forgot for a minute, like, what? And then it dawned on us. Oh my word. That was hilarious.
We did some really creative things. I feel like I'm really proud of us.
Yes. Well, I learned so much about ministry and just loving on people well from you and, eating cookie dough, watching Bachelor and any excuse to get together and eat cookie dough was like an opportunity to minister to people. It was so fun.
So true.
And cheese.
Cheese and cookie dough. Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of cheese. It was, is it the montage?
Yeah, the montage, but also at our home, whenever we would do Bachelor, we never met a cheese we didn't like. So we'd invite that too. And then, it would just be a good night. So yes, very fun doing ministry.
Oh my goodness. Very fun. And we do have so many memories. I know, Kelly, you grew up in a Christian home, I believe, but do you remember or when in your life did your faith really become your own and not just something that you grew up with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, there were many moments. I have like the silly one when I was 5, listening to Salty the Singing Songbook in my bedroom by myself, probably on a record. I don't even remember how it was playing or a tape. I don't remember, but I remember making that decision to follow Jesus, but really it wasn't until my youth group had us do a 3-hour solitude time when I was in high school. And that felt like, oh my gosh, how am I going to spend 3 hours in solitude? What am I going to do with that time? And it was the most powerful time during that camp. Was a houseboat camp. So we But that's when I felt like, oh, there's something here that's just between me and Jesus. And then college is really probably when I started forming I had a sense of call into ministry and a sense of, I love Jesus. I love the Lord. I want to do ministry for life. So I feel like there's these little, moments throughout life. But yeah, and they're all powerful in their own ways. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think knowing you and having the history that we have with gathering of people and your love and natural gifting of hospitality, I remember some of we talked about the funny moments, the cookie dough and the Bachelor and things like that, but you also had very intentional times at your house where I learned how to study with the practice of Lectio Divina. Do you remember those nights?
I do remember those. Oh, that was so sweet. Yes. I mean, I think that probably started in college when I was an RA. I remember feeling like, oh, this is what I love doing. I remember having a weekly Bible study in my dorm room. It was the only year that I had my own dorm room. And really loving that and starting to kind of craft, like, what would I do? How would I lead a group of women through a study? And then moving to Orange County and then having our ministry with St. Andrews and getting to do more things like that because I had my own home and I was able to invite people in and it was more space than a dorm room. That just those kinds of things have always made me come alive, and then doing dinners. I remember our young adult group doing Thanksgiving dinner in our house, and our house was so tiny, but because it was California, we didn't realize until we moved to Oregon how much of life happens outdoors. In California. We're like, whoa, we have to have the same amount of space indoors as we had outdoors there. But to be able to have, a November gathering where people are on the patio and in our guest room and we're eating everywhere, but that has always been a love of gathering people at the table, studying scripture together. Because I really think that the table and eating together and kind of partnering together, table and food and fellowship is what Jesus meant when he said, take this bread, drink this cup, do this in remembrance of me. I don't think it was meant to just be once a month on Sundays at church. I think it was every time you're sitting at a table, every time you're gathered with people and eating cookies and cheese, every time that you're, gathered with a group of women wearing silly dresses, like, do this in remembrance of me because I'm the God of celebration. I'm the God of food. I am the God of good, deep conversation that changes your life. So, yeah.
Well, I learned so much from you in that season and watching you open up your home and teach people, and then hearing about how you had that moment in high school where you had 3 hours of solitude. And now what we're going to talk about here in a minute is your organization or ministry, I guess you would rather call it, Shalom Collective, and understanding a little bit about what that means and why you're doing that. I can see this thread through your story of Jesus showing up for you in certain spaces. And as someone who loves to eat and loves the table, obviously, I am so in to learn more about it. And so Shalom Collective is the name of your ministry. And I wonder if you could start just by defining, what does shalom mean? Because I think we hear it a lot, but I'm not sure that for listeners, I know I haven't always heard, maybe listeners are the same, but I haven't always heard like great definition of shalom. So when you say Shalom Collective, what does that mean?
Yeah. It's a great question. So, we get lots of questions like, do you study Hebrew in this group? Or, why did you name it Shalom? And the reason, as I was, meeting with kind of the people who helped me brainstorm this and create it, the word shalom holds so much richer of a meaning than peace. So we use shalom to say peace, but it means something it means wholeness, healing, reconciliation, well-being. And so it's not just peace be with you. It's may your life be whole. May your life be filled with peace. May you experience the reconciliation that God intended between you and others. And so it's the sense of deep rest, wellness. It's a very rich word. So it sounds, kind of random to use shalom, but we felt like, okay, if we want to create a space where ministry leaders and faith leaders, Christian faith leaders, come together across their differences, what's the hope? Why are we doing this? The hope is for shalom, that our leaders would experience the rest that they need, the little break that they need from just the rigor of ministry, the draining nature of ministry, and that they would experience reconciliation with one another and wholeness, that we're one church. It's not, Lutherans, Presbyterians, non-denoms, Methodists. We're one church. Let's remember this. And in our political, social climate right now, my goodness, if we can't be one in the church, then there really doesn't feel like there's a lot of hope outside of the church. So the goal is that we collectively, by design, because we are made in the image of a triune God, experience shalom that can't be experienced apart from one another. So that's why shalom and collective. So you don't experience shalom only in solitude, you experience it when you're together. So sorry if that was too long of an answer, but
that was great.
It, Shalom Collective. So
that's great. And I am sure there are people listening that are thinking, oh my gosh, I'm interested, but I'm so glad it's not like a Hebrew class, because then I'd check out right away.
I know. Though my Hebrew class was really good. So,
yeah.
But yes, no, we don't do Hebrew lessons at Shalom Collective. Not at all. So
well, I love that picture of wholeness, obviously, beginning with us and our reconciliation to Christ, but then also with each other. I think that's just a beautiful thing. And like you said, I think one of the most compelling stories of God's goodness in the world is when the church is united and supporting one another and encouraging and just acting as one body. So I love that you're creating space for that to happen, where you are. So I want to talk about the 3 pillars of Shalom Collective. It's nourish, rest, connect. But before we get there, maybe can you explain, when did you discover that there was a real need for this? And you kind of touched on, what you hope the objectives are, but why something like Shalom Collective and why now?
Yeah, gosh. Well, it was formed, I think, over the course of many years inside my soul. But I will say, especially, I was finishing my ordination in 2021, but during COVID, I was taking my ord exams, and I was a kind of like a pastor in a church I stepped in for 5 months there was a larger church that was, they had 2 of their pastors on sabbatical. So I was wrestling with, do I stay and only do church ministry, or do I plant something new? And I really felt like there was something that God was like nudging towards new, something new, do something new. So I decided not to stay and go the route only of church ministry, which I think I'll always have a church ministry branch of my life. It just, just finishing pastoring a church. But it just felt like, okay, COVID's happening. Isolation is at its all-time high. I had been reading all these books on kind of what's happening in the church. So church history goes through all these movements. And so we're in a movement where there's a huge shift in church history. So we're seeing a church attendance is really decreasing, and that's super discouraging for pastors. A lot of pastors who went to seminary and, were like, this is my life calling. We're stepping away from ministry. And so a lot of the Barna research was pastors are burning out at a rate that we can't sustain. And our faith leaders are super lonely and super isolated. And so as we moved, and I know that COVID is still a thing, but as we moved out of that really intense COVID season, it felt like, okay, what can we offer that will come alongside of and buoy our leaders so that there isn't just a mass exodus of leaders because they're burned out and they're exhausted and they're lonely. So I was a part of a spiritual formation, like a 2.5-year spiritual formation program through Ruth Barton's Transforming Center. And it was there in my group spiritual direction that I was discerning in my group. And this is a group I had met with for 2.5 years. Like they knew me. We had all, had a lot of time. And one of them stopped me in the middle of my sharing and said, Kelly, if you could do anything with your life, what would you do? And I, like, without even thinking, I was like, I would do what Ruth does. And I would come alongside leaders and just support them, love them. And they all sat back and they were like, yeah, that's what you do here. Like, that's what you do in this setting, as we've watched you. So it's just all those pieces, COVID, being a part of the Transforming Center, sensing God, birthing something in me, and this need that was coming out, and all the books I was reading, it just kind of all came together. And so I felt like, all right, let's give this a try. Let's start something that will create opportunities for leaders to get a little bit of rest, to get connected to each other across, denominations and differences. And we're really intentional about conversation at tables and on retreat where they just share their stories. So it's not about issues. It's not about politics. It's just remember that we are human and that we all have these things that connect us in our stories. So, yeah.
I just think that's one of the most beautiful ways that God shows up with us in our day-to-day is when he knows exactly what he wired us to do. And so when we get these opportunities to answer that question of, yeah, what do you want to do right now? If you could do anything, I think often it's tied to our calling or exactly what he's wired us to do. And so it's super encouraging to see that you've been able to that you're here now, that it's up and running. And how long has it been then since you've had your first is it their retreats and cohorts?
It's a combination. So we did a trial run dinner. So there is a really special farm to table like restaurant, but it's on a farm. And fortunately, I was like, my dream would be if the owner of that farm to table would be on my board. So she's on my board. So she's a board member. She said yes. And I was like, it was like celebrity status, but she owns this farm to table. You literally are driving into farmlands and then you turn onto a farm, and she has transformed this, what used to be a barn, into this beautiful like space where there's one big long farm table and you prepare the meal together. And then you sit at this table and you eat the meal together. So it's a 3-hour experience. So that's the first one. So we do it's a quarterly like gathering that we do. And then we put people who sign up for the year in cohorts of 3 to 4. And so we ask them to meet between our gatherings, just over coffee or something. And we send them questions. But it's meant to just keep them connected and to keep them, sharing with one another. And then we also offer a 24-hour solitude retreat. So, and then we'll send them with a guide. So it's technically, we provide 5 things, and then we ask them to do, something in between our gatherings. So, so some are at the table and some are retreat. So the first one's at the table, the last one's at the table, and we have 2 day-long 9 to 4 retreats, and then a 24-hour retreat whenever they select, and we have places that we send them to. So, yeah.
So talk to me about the 3 pillars. There's nourish, rest, connect. So what do those look like and why those?
Yeah. So that felt like the 3 things. And then shalom is kind of the overarching. So our final gathering is also the theme of shalom, but we don't put that on like our opening webpage. But so couple of reasons. Those 3 things feel like what leaders need the most right now. They need to be nourished. Like we're just going to take care of you, because your whole job is about taking care of others and nourishing others spiritually and relationally. And so we very much, I believe in embodied spirituality. So I think like we are going to give you a really good meal and we're going to nourish you with that good food, but we're also going to nourish you through really wonderful conversation. And even the environment is meant to feel, like a welcoming, safe space to enter. We have musicians that just play worship music very gently in the background. We do liturgy together for that first gathering. So that first gathering the theme is nourish. So everything that we do, we provide books that are about how food and the way that we are at the table, how that connects to our faith and unites us together. And all of our liturgy is about, nourishment, and our conversations it's telling your story kind of through the lens of what is nourishing you right now. What do you need in order to be nourished? Those kinds of questions that they share in groups of 4 at the table. So they first they prepare a meal together. And so their hands and the farm food, is what is that kind of opening nourishment piece and that work together that they do. One of our first attendees, we did a trial run dinner on February of 2023. And that was just, can we do this? And then the first full cohort was last year. So there was 4 gatherings plus, the retreats and things. And then we're now in our second cohort. We're about to have our third gathering in mid-March with that group. So nourish is that. It's just, we want to come alongside you. We also we connect everything to the seasons. So in Oregon, we're very seasonal. So like the fall is the harvest time. You've just come off of September, and life in ministry. You and I both know, I worked in churches for 20 years. So, September is bonkers in the life of the church. We always try and space it like, okay, after September, October is when we're going to nourish you. And it's harvest time. It's like, you've just done all this hard work, and now we're going to sit you down at the table and you get to rest and you get to have just a really good meal and nourish each other through the work that you've just done in preparing this food. Rest is that winter season. So we do a retreat, an all-day retreat from 9 to 4, and it's usually in a very special place. The first one we did was at a private property on a vineyard, and it was spectacular. And then we sent people, they came, and then we said, okay, for the first hour, go rest. Just here's a blanket that you get to take home, and now go take a nap. Or if you just need to stare blankly with a cup of coffee, do that. Just be here. There's nothing that you need to do. You don't have to prepare anything. And then we started our retreat. So it was always kind of in winter, it's a hibernating season. The plants look like they're dead, but really they're doing that hard work of like growing underneath the dark surface. So that's rest. So we really want to emphasize, you've just come off of Advent. You've just come off of this season of really hard work in the church again. This busy, busy season where you've either preached or you've prepared all the Christmas things for your church, and now it's time to rest. And then in the spring before Easter, as they're, prepping for Easter, we want them to have that encouragement of connecting with each other. And often we see there's this connecting, like the pieces are coming together in nature and things are blooming and things are starting to come to life again. And so we try and model. So we do that through group spiritual direction. We bring them to another retreat center. This is usually a different setting. So we try and do like a very kind of extravagant place. And then the second, our Connect retreat is often at a Catholic retreat center that feels more simple, because that is also the reality of life and life lived in community. So we go to a Trappist Abbey, which is a communal community, and we invite them to do group spiritual direction. We bring spiritual directors who can do one-on-one direction. We give them a lot of space for some solitude time, but then they come back together and they reflect on that solitude in small and then large gatherings. So, and then our final one is a dinner again, and it's a shalom dinner. So that theme of the first year we did, they went and planted in the garden and then came back, and we talked about how does that sense of planting and growth reflect our own work that we do of entering into rest, entering into quiet, being connected to one another. This year, we're going to do it in a different location, but similar kinds of activities and things. So, yeah, it's meant to be, those themes are meant to be, this is what we think faith leaders need right now. And they mirror the seasons. They also come during the times that we think are the most important for the faith leaders to kind of have a buoy. And yeah, it's been so fun. And it's so, like, one of our rest retreat, we had a couple participants walk into the setting and they just started crying. They were like, this is so beautiful. Thank you. It's like, oh, I love that. I love, because that reflects God's goodness, talking about God's goodness. Like, our God is an extravagant God who loves us in ways that totally surprise us. And so we want to do that because these are the people who are modeling that for our churches and our nonprofit organizations. So if we can bring them in and say, and you also get to experience that, it's really fun.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. I would imagine going with meeting others at a place like that and going through those different experiences would really grow a very special community for those folks that have attended, from the beginning to the end. And so what has that looked like for, I know it's still fairly new, but you've got, for like maybe that first group that went through the process. I mean, what has that meant for them on the other end of that?
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because there is a very distinct shift that happens between the first gathering, which, like, people are kind of like, oh, okay, I do know one person in the room, or it's like awkward and people are kind of coming in and figuring out where they fit, to then the rest retreat where you're given permission to just be. There's a big, like, dynamic that shifts in the room during that time. And the group from last year that I think had got the most out of it was the group that was really committed to meeting in between the times. So they had these shifts and it was like, oh, here's your group. Okay, good to meet you. We'll share our stories. And then by the end, it was so dear. I wish I had like a picture on my computer to show you, but we had them at the very end, the Shalom gathering, do like bless each other and send each other off. And this group, specifically the one that was like, we are going to meet every time, and we're also going to keep meeting after this is done. I have this sweet picture of them all like in a circle, offering blessings to one another. And it's just so sweet because all we do is just provide the space. Like, there's nothing I can do to force relationships or even to force them to connect with each other. Like, I can say, hey, it would be really wonderful if you connected between the quarters. Some people couldn't do it. They just didn't have the time in their schedules.
Sure.
But those who did, it was like so sacred. And those are the people who were willing to share. We did a 1-year birthday celebration for Shalom Collective, and they shared at that. And it was like, why we do what we do. They just, we need each other. And we think we don't. And we're totally in our society made to feel like you can just be autonomous, be independent, do your own thing. But it's like, you realize how powerful it is when we actually do life together and process with each other. Like, oh, ministry is hard. It's draining. And I feel like an imposter and I don't think I can do this. So anyway.
Yeah.
It's been sweet.
Yeah. That's really sweet. I love what you're doing, Kelly, because I also feel that there's a need there. And so, I haven't worked in the church in a while, but obviously I'm an active participant. I love the church and I see it all the time. I see the need of community for our pastors and for our leaders but honestly, we're so busy as a culture and as a society that I think the desire is there for things like this, for community, for nourishment, obviously for rest. But because we are in a culture that constantly we just feel like we're behind in everything. And so to constantly feel behind makes it near impossible to actually do what we need to do to live in this shalom that God has intended for us. And so I love You have created space for folks to do that. So is it open to any pastor, any ministry leader, like nationwide, maybe even some Canadians because they're close to Canada up there?
Yeah, I mean, it is for sure. I think what my goal, so I just ended my time of being a pastor at this, a bridge pastor, so transitional pastor at this church, so that I can figure out how do we make this accessible to people who are outside of Oregon, because certainly anyone is welcome, and I would love if people came, but it's a lot to commit to. The first one is a 3-hour dinner experience. The second 2 are all-day retreats, but it's, day retreats. So it's hard for someone from far away. So I'm trying to figure out my next, few months is to strategically plan with my board. How do we make this something that's available in other places? How do we, partner with other states and other churches, other, organizations, so that we can do this work more broadly. So absolutely anyone is welcome to come. But yeah. And I mean, what you just stated as busyness, it's so hard initially to get people to say yes to coming. One, because it's new and people don't really know what they're signing up for. 2, because it's like, I often say, I feel like it's like we're the scripture passage about the host of the wedding feast. And it's like, oh, I'm too busy. I have this coming up. I have this out. I need to do this in my schedule. And the host is like, go onto the streets and go and look in the bushes. Like, anybody is welcome to come. So I feel very much like, if you are a faith leader, you need it. I don't want anything from you. I want something for you. So just, you will not be disappointed when you come, because it's so special, Yeah. So yeah, I would say yes, anyone's invited, and we're trying to figure out how to broaden it.
Yeah. So for those who can't make it right now, and I'm just thinking of, like a stay-at-home mom, or even a working mom, like a mom with littles, who's really struggling to find space in her life for nourishment, rest, and connection. What are some things that you might encourage folks to do right where they are that can start to tap into this shalom living that God has for us?
Yeah. Well, what I would say is silence. I mean, I am a mom with 3 kids at home, and I feel very much like my only window of time to be alone and to, continue to kind of keep that pace of stillness is early mornings. Some people do better with night. I always light a candle. I just finished reading Martin Laird's Into the Silent Land, and that I cannot recommend it highly enough. It is so well done, and it's a walk. It's a very in-depth. He's just extremely profound and smart and wise, but he just talks about contemplative prayer and sitting in silence and just even repeating a word, like prayerfully in the presence of God. So every morning for me, I have my cup of coffee. I just got an espresso for Christmas.
Yay.
So
that's
great.
awesome.
I have a latte every morning, and I light my candle, and I just we don't need all the books. We don't need all of the studies. It's like, just sit in the presence of Jesus. And, whether it's the word peace or, love, we all kind of have a different word that we hold before God. And if it's even 15 minutes of just holding silence, especially for moms with littles, that would be the practice of daily silence for anyone is powerful and needed, especially in our world with so much noise. So that would be one. And then I would say, if there's a possibility of, setting aside a half of a day or a full day for a retreat, I mean, I've crafted so many for friends of, here's a scripture passage to meditate on, here's a prayer to pray, a liturgy to read, and then just be quiet with Jesus and imagine Jesus saying to you, what can I do for you? As he did with blind Bartimaeus, and what comes out. So there's so many simple things. It doesn't have to be, wild crafted. It's all about creating the space to do that. So, yeah.
I think it's great what you're doing, Kelly. And I know, as someone who's seen you in action and got to work alongside you in ministry for a season. You've been an absolute blessing in my life, and the gift of your friendship is one of my greatest gifts, because I have learned so much from you, from your retreats, from your wild adventures and ideas like 27 dresses. And we haven't talked about the giraffe hat here on the recording, but, just showing up to work and seeing you in a giraffe hat. But it created space for you to love people. And I just love that's who you are. And I think when I heard about Shalom Collective and what you're doing, I wasn't at all surprised, because this just feels like something God has been preparing you for a long time. And I am very blessed to have been the recipient of your ministry and your friendship. And I love what you're doing. And so I hope that, our listeners are encouraged by hearing what you're up to, and thinking of ways that they might also just incorporate this idea of shalom in our lives. So, Kelly, you have been doing ministry for so long, and you do it so well. I love asking this question at the end of conversations, because the show's called That's For Sure. And so I love talking about what people are absolutely sure is true about who God is, based on their experience. And so, Kelly Dickson, what do you know to be absolutely true about who God is?
I love that. Well, as I concluded my time at this church, had my, with my very last sermon yesterday, one of the things my spiritual director said is most pastors have 3 sermons they preach, and it's always what they know to be most true about God. And so the theme kind of yesterday that I want to always leave people with is the reminder, you are loved, you are loved, you are loved. And I think that if we can remember that we live and move and have our being in the midst of a God who loves us so much, and that out of that belovedness we do everything we do, I think our world would be so different. So what do I know to be true about God? That God is love. I also know God to be a God of joy and laughter. We've laughed a lot together. We've laughed a lot together. Just so much good laughter. I think that embodies who God is. God is a God of celebration and laughter. Life is this one precious life is meant to be lived in the knowledge of that joy of how good and abundant and extravagant and joyful God is. And one thing I know to be true is that the table is a place of healing. I just really, really believe that with my whole self. And I think we've missed it a bit in the church when we hand out, which, sometimes it can be just something that we fall into this routine of doing. Take this bread, drink this cup. I think it's meant to reveal the abundance of God. Every time you sit at a table, every time you sit across from someone and you have that special conversation, every time you eat something where you go, oh my gosh, this is so good, that reflects who God is. So, that would be just the initial. So I often preach about the table. I often preach about how loved we are. And I often preach about how God always meant us to be one people and united, and that nobody is left without a seat at the table.
That's right.
So, yeah.
So good. Kelly Dickson, I could talk to you all day about really what you're doing. It's so fun. It's so fun. And
so long. It's me. That's what took us so long.
Well, I mean, we've probably talked. We've talked. It's not been 10 years since we've talked, but
right. No, but just seeing each other live.
Yes. Yeah. This Zoom thing is wild, but I'm grateful for it. I don't know how the internet and the interworkings of the web work, but I'm grateful for moments like this. And Kelly, I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up, but here we go. It's not everybody has a friend like Kelly Dickson who, when traveling into developing countries such as Malawi, you feel like a flap of something on the face. I specifically remember what is on my face. And, you're in Malawi. There's not exactly mirrors everywhere. And I remember going to you, my dear friend, and saying, is there like a hair or something on my face? Like we're talking high cheekbone.
One big one. Yes,
one flapping in the wind, long hair. It's not every day that you can say you have a friend who's willing to identify and yank out an unwanted cheekbone hair.
It really isn't, but this is where we've been together.
This is where we've been. And we're just, if another 10 years goes by, we're going to pick right back up, and we're going to love all the hairs, and they're going to just love the ministry. And Kelly, I am so grateful for you. And, I live in Jurassic Park, Florida now. So if ever you find yourself down here with the alligators and pterodactyl birds flying everywhere, please, let's get together and not make it go so long before we see each other again. So thank you.
Well done, Carrie. You're doing a really good job. I love that you're doing this.